Welcome to our next speakers, Frederik, Kramer and Ruben Ortlam. We are going to present the potential of large language models for Odoo ecosystem.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. So happy to hear you and to see you all around here. Actually, I have brought an entire team this year with me, including my precious colleague Ruben, who is the technical part on what we're going to present today. First, I would like to start with a short motivation. Then I would like to give some insights on the open source large language models. Ruben will then take over and speak about the technical terms and the technical details of it. And I'd like to summarize what we try to transmit to you today by giving you a short takeaway at the finish. So, what has been our core motivation? As you know, last year the term ChatGPT was in every mouth basically, and everybody, like educated or not, seemed to speak about the technology. And well, me and also my colleagues had the feeling that probably it's worth to look behind the scenes to see what's going on really behind the technology. So, and as we are an open source company, we genuinely would like to avoid vendor lock-in and dependency on certain technology. So it seemed obvious that we weren't trying to play around with the technology by just using the ChatGPT API, but instead doing something different. Well, at least we thought we are capable of doing so. Basically, my colleague said I'm basically to do so. So I thought, okay, let's give it a try. Let's try to invest a little time and a little budget into make it work. We were curious and wanted to know where easy means takes us. And easy means mean small investments, of course, seed investments. When we speak about artificial intelligence and machine learning, what comes to mind always is huge investments that need to be done up front to achieve anything. And of course, we are a small company. We don't have this monetary capabilities, so we try to start out with a limited budget. We thought the potential usefulness for our company and our processes would be huge, because what we've seen from also using ChatGPT was quite astonishing, and we thought, okay, that must be something able with using open source technology. And of course, as an open source company, dealing with all the matters that big tech brought to us, we strongly believe that the field should not be left to as the sole playground for US big tech companies. Now, I don't know how many of you have informed themselves about the core concept of large language models. Basically, the evolution of the core concept is a step back, because as you know, scientists have done marvelous work in trying to employ recurrent neural networks to do deep insights into data already. And recurrent neural networks are very efficient in some regard, but have some drawbacks with regards to language processing. And that led to a newer technology, which is basically a step back, as it took away the recurrency in recurrent neural network and recurrent neural networks, and replaced that by an architecture that had several advantages above these recurrent neural network. One of these is the ability of parallel processing. huge quantities of matrices at the same time. And this brought up what is called the transformer architecture of neural networks. So the prevalence of ChatGPT, as you can see from the Google Trends picture that we've just gave you here, basically before October, December 2022, there was nothing on ChatGPT, and then OpenAI published this chatbot, heavily marketed in the marketplace, and then the key trends exploded on Google. So it was in every mouth, effectively immediately. But of course, in order to play around with it, we had also privacy and reliancy concerns. Reliancy concerns, I've spoken about that already. So creating vendor lock-ins, storing data, or transferring data to somebody that you don't immediately trust. But that becomes a very core issue if you deal with customer data, as we do in our Odoo projects, with our projects in general, and also with data that we own among our own employees. So we had these concerns, and we're searching for alternatives, and that is where my colleague Ruben takes over.
Yes, so to find an alternative to ChatGPT, we had to look for a model, since, as Frederik already said, we don't have or basically nearly no one has the capability of creating such a model from scratch, so you have to rely on other companies. Luckily, there are some huge companies that do value the open approach and the open source community, and that have created models that they released for free that everyone can use. And in this case, the main one that's being used by the open source community right now is Meta's Llama model. So there was a first version of that was released, which released this one version basically was leaked. So it was so you could use it, but not for commercial purposes for a long time. But at a later point, a few months ago, Meta released their second version of the Llama model with a license that actually allows commercial use up to a certain number of users in the high millions. So, which is much more than matters to us. So that is one kind of model that you can use to replace for all kinds of tasks that are similar to what ChatGPT is used for. And another recent one is the Mistral model, which comes from a European, I think from a French company now, which is just also getting a lot of investment because it actually showed a lot of potential and good results, even compared to the previous models, to the Llama models by Meta. So these two models can be used commercially and can actually run on local, on private and completely self-owned hardware. But these models themselves, the foundation models, are only trained on snippets, usually on just language. There's the usual database just consists of, or the data sets consist of websites, huge scrapes from web forums and similar sites, to actually use them in a capacity that in a more useful capacity, similar to ChatGPT or other tasks, you have to tune them. It's called fine-tuning. It's basically continuing the training with that has already been done with a smaller data set. This is still expensive, but much less so than creating the actual model. So this can actually be done by smaller companies if the need arises. But even there the open community has created a lot of different fine-tunes that are publicly available and commercially usable. So you can, for most applications, unless they are very specific, you can already find fine-tunes that are ready to use without further investment or training. So just briefly, the three example categories that these fine-tunes have been created for is following instructions, like writing a specific text in a certain format, or answering questions in a specific way, or even giving outputs in a format that is computer readable, like answering in a JSON or similar format. There are the chat models, where the primary example that everyone knows is ChatGPT itself. These kinds of fine-tunes are also available and getting used a lot, and also very useful are code models, which can be used as an assistant while coding to finish up functions similar to GitHub's Copilot. But of course, while Copilot has some implications when you use it on code that has specific licenses or has to be private, these fine-tunes, since they can run on your hardware, can be used on anything without any risk of leaking the code to some company. So there's a number of technologies that have been developed that allow using these huge models on relatively cheap hardware. The main one is something called a quantization, that just means reducing the number of bits you use to store each weight of the neural network that the model consists of. So usually you would have to put the entire model into your RAM. So you need a lot of a computer with a lot of space to fit the entire model. If you quantize the model down, then you, instead of using like 32 bits for one number, you just use around 5 or less. So the model shrinks in size, and you need you can use much cheaper hardware to run the model. One GitHub project that is getting a lot of attention and that's being used for this purpose is the llama.cpp program, which allows you to use this number of these kinds of quantizations on models and run them on even on CPUs or on much cheaper like gaming graphics cards that are affordable and cost much less than the kinds of data center hardware that, for example, OpenAI uses for their GPT models. So in our case, we looked at used data center equipment. Since huge numbers of GPUs go into data centers each year, they have to get replaced at some point, and to get replaced, the old ones get sold. So you can get few years old hardware much cheaper, and this can still be used for these kinds of applications. And so the other three companies that you can look at are NVIDIA and AMD for their gaming and for their data center GPUs, and the new Intel gaming cards are also usable. And of course, just the Llama CPP can run these Llama models also just on the CPU, which is going to be slower, but it may still be enough for your for applications that don't need an immediate response. So in our case, we built a very cheap computer, just from used parts from eBay basically, and used that to evaluate this topic without having to invest that much. So yeah, as we already said, the cost and complexity to train own base model is basically It's way too much. It's impossible to do for anything below like companies like Meta. So we want to we want to use a local machine that's in our office, so we can use it on customer data without any risk of losing it, of leaking it somewhere. And even another possibility that you could look at is renting servers, but renting servers that have the required graphics card to run these models quickly also gets very expensive. So even though this computer costs a little bit and costs a little bit more to run, like just electricity costs, it's still much less than renting it somewhere. For that reason we built one, and Frederik will continue with what we're actually doing with it.
Thank you, Ruben. Yeah, as you can see, it's much cheaper, but it's still our supercomputer in our head offices in Magdeburg. So we can even start that from everywhere in the world to employ it for our purposes. And we started, of course, to do some experiments on our own supercomputer, which we will try to explain you now. So we will dig into the topic what our supercomputer actually does. We use, for instance, Mattermost as a chat client for our internal communication. So whenever we do project work, we use Mattermost to do so. And we thought that it would be nice if we could use our Mattermost instance to actually communicate with a chatbot like ChatGPT. So what we did is integrating that with Mattermost. So we hooked a command inside our Mattermost bot that allows us to ask questions, but instead of being sent to ChatGPT's API, they are being sent to our internal supercomputer, processed there and answered on our Mattermost bot. So we can, for instance, and we did that, ask question, what is Scrum and Agile methodology all about? And then it gives you a nice feedback about what it could be about. Just similar to what ChatGPT would do if you address the API. But we thought, okay, this is not it. We wanted to be a bit more than this. So we started to also build a summarizing service because if you want to assess vast concepts and especially scientific papers, the abstract of a scientific paper sometimes is not as good as it could be. So we thought about a summarizing web service where we just can put a vast amount of text data and ask our AI to summarize it would be also quite useful in our daily business. So we built that as a second prototype. So we have a service now in the company that is able to summarize services. We also extended that to an extent where we can also include websites. So we can pass an URL to our large language model and tell them, okay, summarize the content of this URL. This is quite useful if you have a huge documentation and you would like to just get the main grasp out of that. Furthermore, as you guys probably also be affected from, we have to do various meetings with our customers and even internally to conceptualize solutions. And sometimes it's a really nasty job to write that all down, to summarize it all. And we thought, okay, automating this summarization of a transcript and actually keeping the synthesis is a good thing. So what we did is we used a different model, which is called Whisper CPP, to actually transcribe the video streams or the video recordings in that regard from our meetings, and then we use that to summarize it in a text or markdown document. And in order to do so, we built some of you may use a Nextcloud. We built an integration to Nextcloud for that, So what we can do now is we can actually record a meeting, put the record of the video with even the visuals on our Nextcloud. It will automatically extract the audio files, transcribe the audio files, and even summarize that if we want. So that gives a really win on performance, and the nasty work is gone. But we have more use cases than this. For instance, as you may have heard of IT integrators like us, and you probably as well, also from time to time have the challenge that customer support is being asked for help. And we wanted our artificial intelligence to help us assessing the support emails, whether it's actually critical or not, because you know when the customer approaches you with an email, it's always critical. But we thought, okay, an artificial intelligence may help us in classifying whether something is really critical or not. So we tried to build a prototype that classifies support emails on the urgency and the issue itself, extracting relevant data from it, and identifying missing details with the intent to formulate even possible responses. Please provide a picture, please provide a click path, or even a video that we can analyze your problem duly, and doing so spending less of our precious work time on actually doing that kind of work, because it, as you may see in your own use cases, it's always the same. Customers describe something without context, so it's easy to answer them, oh, could you please provide a little more context for the problem to be solved. Yeah, but there are future use cases in relation to Odoo, of course. What we've talked about is just the project work that we conduct on Odoo or with Odoo, but there is more to be done for Odoo. And one of the things that we plan to do is evaluating our own open source AI as Copilot like code assistant for the OCA. That would, of course, require probably a little bit more of context for the model and even training on some data sets. So maybe it could be interesting to train the model on a curated set of Odoo modules in order to be a bit more precise in helping us all to code good content. We'd like to possibly fine-tune the model on Odoo code for that purpose. And building a functional consulting assistant that recommends Odoo modules and Odoo community modules to build a certain solution following a business requirement would somehow help the functional consultants to get the best run solution. You learned about the best run solution if you attended the last board meeting here just a half an hour ago. It might help us to serve our customers better on this. And of course, we'd like to further head for data evaluation and presentation within Odoo. That means, for instance, integrating it in the CRM module to be able to answer even questions from the data stored inside Odoo. So that brings us to the key takeaways. Unfortunately, we were not able to integrate a use case into our presentation today, because we wanted you to interact with us and also give your ideas and possibilities where we should take it further. But we also have some examples to be shown probably then after today or tomorrow in the meeting, so we will be around, and I think Ruben is happy, and me as well, to discuss with you the possibilities and the prototypes that we already have built, and show you also something if you want, and get in touch with you. So what are the key takeaways from today's talk? First, I think playing with the hype is much more interesting than only talking about it. And I have seen so many people after that release of ChatGPT that we're talking about it. Just to give you an idea, I was in a meeting with a responsible guy from the educational federal state of Saxony-Anhalt, where we live, speaking about potential use of ChatGPT for educating pupils, and he was speaking like just in marketing terms of that technology without even understanding what it does. And this is, I think, a potential risk for our society in Europe, because we are relying the next generation of workforce on a technology that they don't understand but just use. So we would like to use it, to be curious to how it works and to even tweak it to our purposes. And there is more that you can do than just using an SaaS API to pay for, because there were many people, after I discussed with some IT guys, and they asked me, why the hell are you spending and wasting money and doing it yourself if you could only use it by using the API? And my answer was, no, I don't want to. We'd like to be curious about the technology. We'd like to take it further. And I think there lies a lot of potential for the European market in exactly getting curious about AI. And all data center hardware can do many jobs, as you have seen. So what hinders you to do so? Just digging in the open source community, buying your own data center card. So the investment will be roughly around €1,000 for our supercomputer, not more than this. So if you want to do it a little bit more expensive, you could go to AWS and pay what a month for similar hardware? 500. So into the amortization of your own supercomputer is about 2 months, which is pretty good, I think. So you can use that, but be aware the hardware is old, is aging fast, and the technology is progressing in a very, very huge steps. So, and we think from playing comes curiosity. So we also spread our micro experiments with our colleagues, and by doing so we got various feedback from our colleagues. Could you do this? Could you do that? And one of our colleagues keeps pinging us with, oh, did you think about security? No, of course not in the beginning, but we think of it. And yeah, there's a big open source AI community that takes the topic further. This is much bigger than just 2 US companies. So happy to have you here, and I hope there are some questions.
Thank you for doing this talk, because I had the idea of doing AI co-piloting for functional people, but I have no time with 2 small kids. So I had to email the OCA back, no, I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. I saw that the solutions that you already have are mostly, I would characterize them as like process-based. They help you along the way. And the future features that you'd like to roll out are core business, as I would think, from a developer's perspective. Is the reason that this is the order of working for you because a model will truly need to be trained on Odoo specifically to give valid or like 90% useful results? Because my experience with GPT has been okay-ish, but it's more of a generalized platform tool. Is that the reason?
Yeah, maybe Ruben can comment on this. I would say yes. In order to make something useful with Odoo data and with the core data in the ERP system, it should be trained more to the specific use case and have more narrow context that we use for the process applications that we. But one of the reasons why it's simply like this, we started the project when? Like 2 months ago, 3 months ago?
3 months.
So we have limited resources, so we took it where it made the most fun in the beginning, and then take it further and further and further, and now we're approaching the Odoo core use cases. Yeah.
Do developers like experimenting with like true development co-piloting, or are they kind of averse to the idea, and are they even liking the results? Because I've got colleagues who are allergic to large language models, or so they say at the moment.
Yeah, I think we have also colleagues that are allergic, but I'd like to answer that question by a developer.
Well, I mean, I can mostly just speak for myself, but I haven't actually tried Copilot itself that much because I don't like the approach of relying on Microsoft in that case, on GitHub. I do like the idea of especially for a lot of menial tasks where you just need to fill out a simple function where basically it's very clear what you need to write, but it's still work to do. I do like the idea of just describing what the function does and then getting an AI to write the function. For that to actually use it, I want that AI to run on a system that I own or that I can trust at least, and not some service.
So there was a question from you.
In our company, we did a hackathon. Tesla, where we also tested this technology a little bit with LangChain, which is a wrapper for those models where you can use OpenAI or other models or those sort of things. And the idea was to build a simple chat where the model transforms your input into a function call or finds out the parameters. And it's really an easy or easy task, but it's very efficient. So you can prepare functions and let transform your inputs into the parameters of this function. So you can easily build something like finding your orders or something like that. So it is, and if you use your own model like you with your machine, it can be really a company-owned service. So I think it's a good idea to play with these things because, as you said, it's not real AI. It's a language model. So it's really a step back. You're right. But you can use it as a fantastic transformer for something.
Yeah. So we've also used LangChain in our prototypes. So it allows you to use different backends. So you can use it with OpenAI, or you can use it with an own machine and your own hardware. And I think it's a very good idea to try it out. That's why we've been doing it.
And maybe comment and then you, Ashan. I think that this would be also one thing we are heading to provide a service to our customers besides their Odoo systems where they can use this technology to be more efficiently working with their own ERP systems to get answers out of that without by exactly doing what you were referring to.
And I don't have a question, but I just want to share an experience. Some experiments we did in our company is so the first thing we did is we took the phone and we ran ChatGPT on it and started to speak the requirements into it as an input, as a prompt, and told it to first write a specification in just plain English or German. It did it pretty well in normal SRS, software requirement specification standards and norms, which is already a valuable piece that it did for us. And then we said, for this specification, please write an Odoo 15 or Odoo 16 module for a specific functionality that we also, which was written in the SRS. It did the scaffolding of the whole module. It saved us time to basically write the structures. It tried to write useful functions, but it failed after that point. So we had to take over. So the human had to take over at that point. But I think it, for that module, from a cost perspective, 50% it did for us for free. And the rest of it we had to finish. So that was an experience we had. We probably did it a couple of times.
Well, I think we have to be curious and we have to do much more experiments than just one to be really sure that it saves us cost at the end, because I'm not quite sure that this way of producing scaffolded code will actually be the most efficient way to do things, especially if you don't take into account what already exists in the vast community of the OCA, so that it needs to be part of the context of the decision making for the language model, at least, in order to make it really efficient. But yes, I do agree, it can take down the engineering costs quite a bit, but my personal experiments with all the technology tell me, because I did a similar experiment with ChatGPT way down the line with a scientific paper, and I was asking for a scientific concept, and it gave me the scientific concept. It was nicely written, and then I asked me, okay, now if I would like to have some scientific evidence, could you please provide me with scientific evidence? Yes, it provided me with scientific evidence, and then I said, okay, could you now please tell me where I can find the paper? It told me, yes, you can find the paper here. And what happened was, I searched the paper. The journal that it mentioned was not even existing, although it sounded good. So you have to be very, very going to the details in order to be sure that, or somewhat sure that the technology helps you really and doesn't fool you. But yes, this can be solved and will be solved.
Yeah, I made the same experience with copilots, because I used it lots. And for interview scripts, when I ask like parsing or doing like this, it often happens that he gives a wrong answer, and there's saying the answer is wrong, and they insist that it's right.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you have to keep in mind is the transformer architecture changed the way the model is working by limiting the historical knowledge that it takes into account. So transformer have one disadvantage about recurrent neural networks, that is that there is only limited knowledge from previous time steps taken into account for the future. So, and this is done with the attention mechanism and with injecting the results of the previous step into the further process, but it's not really recurrency. That makes it computationally more efficient because you can parallelize it, but it limits the amount of historical information in the ground truth, and at the end of the day, it's remaining a stochastical model that is just likelihood and not necessarily truth. So correlation is not causation. This is the term that the scientists usually use. Thank you.